Committee will come to order. Mr. Deutsch, our ranking member, will be here with us shortly. So, Brad, it's up to you to do the opening statement, okay? So after recognizing myself and Brad for 5 minutes each for our opening statements, I will then recognize members of our subcommittee who seek recognition for their statements. We will then hear from our witnesses. Thank you, ladies. And without objection, your prepared statements will be made a part of the record. I did not get the memo on the blue. I would have gone with you, but members may have 5 days to insert statements and questions for the record, subject to the length limitations in the rules. The chair now recognizes herself for 5 minutes. The Middle East and North Africa remain a region fraught with difficulties and dangers that threaten United States national security interests and must not be overlooked. In previous years, the administration has requested, but never received authorization or appropriations, the authority to establish yet another flexible spending account in the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs called the Middle East and North Africa Incentive Fund. This account, in essence, was more like a slush fund for the administration to allocate and distribute hundreds of millions of dollars in assistance without having to justify to or get authority from Congress. And though the name has changed, the idea has resurfaced again in this year's budget request under the name of Middle East and North Africa Initiative. I continue to object to the authorization of this initiative and question whether the shift to regional accounts is the best approach. Many traditional bilateral accounts have decreased, and it may signal to our allies that the United States is not committed to the Middle East and North Africa region. In addition, with so many regional accounts already in place, there's a great risk of duplicity and overlapping of U.S. taxpayer dollars. The United States has already spent over $1.7 billion on the Syrian humanitarian crisis to help those Syrians who are in dire need of this assistance and those host governments that have taken in a combined total of nearly 3 million Syrian refugees, despite the incredible strain that it has placed on their own governments. However, we cannot continue to throw money at the problem if the administration lacks a clear and decisive plan in dealing with the Syrian conflict. We continue to treat the symptoms of the problem, but not the disease. Perhaps nowhere is this failed leadership and misguided policy in the region more salient than the current state of the peace process between the Israelis and the Palestinians. As the deadline came and went today, the process has failed, and the result has been an announced agreement between Fatah and Hamas. This unity reconciliation deal has major implications for the fiscal year 2015 budget request, as the administration is seeking over $440 million in direct bilateral assistance for the Palestinian Authority and the West Bank and Gaza. However, if Hamas is part of this Palestinian unity government, the U.S. law that I drafted and became a law would prohibit this assistance, and we must abide by the law. In 2006, I authored the Palestinian Anti-Terrorism Act, which later became the law that put this prohibition in place. The law is clear. The U.S. cannot send funds to a Palestinian government that includes members of the terrorist group Hamas. Unlike the United States, which continues to negotiate with the world's biggest state sponsor of terrorism, Iran, Israel will not and should not be pressured into dealing with a Palestinian government that seeks closer ties with Hamas. That's why I was deeply dismayed to read Secretary Kerry's comment this weekend suggesting Israel will become an apartheid state if it abandons the negotiations. These remarks are offensive and are beneath the office of the highest-ranking U.S. government diplomat. But the reconciliation movement isn't the only real consequence of the administration's failed policies of peace in the Middle East. This past weekend, Reports indicated that the Palestinians plan on moving forward with their scheme at the United Nations to be granted de facto recognition by becoming members of other agencies, not just UNESCO. The administration continues to seek waiver authority to fund UNESCO, including arrears payments that would leave the U.S. taxpayers on the hook for nearly $1 billion after it admitted the non-existent state of Palestine. Now, this latest move by the PA could force the administration into defunding any UN agency that admits Palestine, and I will continue to do everything within my power to ensure that no such waiver is granted and that the law will be fully enforced. Another matter in which the administration's policies have been indecisive and where our dithering has served only to complicate the situation is the political transition in Egypt. While I recognize the security needs of Egypt that are essential for stability in the region, I remain concerned over the steps that still need to be taken for a democratic transition and respect for human rights, and feel that perhaps more should be done to help establish and fund democratic institutions rather than the military. The upcoming presidential elections will be a litmus test for Egypt's transition and will give us an opportunity to reassess our aid package. I'm also increasingly concerned about the endless capitulations and concessions to the Iranian regime and the havoc that the Syrian conflict is causing in Lebanon as that country draws closer to an all-out sectarian war. And while countries like Yemen, Tunisia, and Libya, and others in the region continue to struggle with deteriorating security, economic, and political environments, it's clear that the U.S. must reevaluate our foreign policy and that there are far too many countries of strategic importance to the United States' national security in the region for the administration to continue to pivot to Asia. We must address these issues by first dealing with them directly and effectively.